Yes, Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Secretary Benson, we've worked together. I appreciate you coming before the Rules Committee, and I think you know we've done some really important work there and are about to do some very important work on the Electoral Count Act. That hearing couldn't have gone better, just so you all know, while you were testifying here, that was going over there, and it was very bipartisan, and a very positive hearing with every single witness agreeing, including the Republican witnesses, that we should reform the act and basically on the structure of those reforms. So I'll start with you, Secretary Benson. In December of 2020, approximately 24 armed protesters accused you of ignoring voter fraud in the 2020 election. They surrounded your house chanting "Stop the Steal" as you prepared, as I understand, to watch a Christmas movie with your 4-year-old son. In one video updated to social media, at least one person could be heard shouting "You're murderers" within earshot of your child's bedroom. Could you describe the toll that those kinds of intimidation tactics have taken on you and your family?
Yes, thank you, Senator Klobuchar, also really for your leadership of bringing people together to move things forward. And I hope we'll see more bipartisan leadership as well on many of the other things we need to do to improve and protect our democracy. So I'm grateful for your leadership on that. I signed up for this work knowing that oftentimes defending democracy means being able to and willing to stand on the front lines and face down threats and challenges. Indeed, that's what many heroes throughout the history of our country have done. We certainly, though, don't expect them in the dark of night to come to the doorstep of our homes. I certainly didn't expect as a mom to have to explain to my kid what the noise was, and even again, that was a very well-known incident. It was not the only incident outside my home, and to have to teach my son that standing up for what's right often does require us to handle threats like these, threats to our lives. It creates an air of anxiety and stress that no child and no parent should have to endure. And to know that this is happening because of a lie, because of lies about our democracy, makes it particularly pernicious and painful. But again, the last thing I'll say is that evening, for me, I also knew they weren't protesting me. Those individuals were protesting the will of the people in our state. And as the Secretary of State of Michigan, I'll proudly defend the will of the people every day and stand up to do it again and again. So thank you again.
Thank you. Secretary Toulouse-Oliver, good to see you again, and thank you for I know you were served a term also as the heads of the Secretaries of State nationally, got to work with my great Secretary of State, Steve Simon. I won't mention our voter turnout rate is the highest in the country, but I just did. And I want to thank you. Following the 2020 election, your personal information was published. You had to leave your home under police protection for weeks. In the years since, you and other members of your office have had to use services to remove personal information from the internet, and as recently as this past June, you received threatening phone calls that had to be referred to the FBI. We know election workers like yourself and like the people that work for you in every state in this country are necessary to the functioning of our democracy. It's never acceptable for anyone to use violence or threats of violence to advance political goals. Could you talk about how these threats have made it harder for not just you, but your staff to do their jobs?
Yes, and thank you, Senator. Thanks for always being such a wonderful partner and advocate in working with election officials across the board. I had not the same situation as Secretary Benson, but like Secretary Benson, this has had a deep and profound impact on me and my personal life and on my staff. And I think it's the staff, I think it's the state election officials, and then, of course, the folks that are really on the front lines, our county clerks, our local election administrators and their family and their staff, those poll workers that are out in the field that literally just come in to do their jobs, leave their partisan hat at the door, that are being most deeply affected. I was just at our state county clerk meeting prior to our general election that we do. We do it before every statewide election in New Mexico, having very important moving conversations primarily actually this time with county clerks from across party lines to me that are experiencing the impacts most deeply in their counties, that are wondering if they can keep going on, that are talking about retirement, that are wondering if they're going to run for reelection because the daily pressure and stress and serious concern that they're dealing with is making them wonder if they can continue. And so, I know that's just a microcosm of the macrocosm of what we are experiencing as election officials at all levels.
Thank you. Mr. Crane, I missed your statement because I was doing this other hearing, but my staff told me you did a great job. And I thought this question, just kind of playing off what the Secretary of State talked about of turnover, this came out in a hearing we had, including from the Kentucky Secretary of State, Republican Secretary of State, just about how it was hard to retain volunteers and staff, and how perhaps federal law, and Senator Durbin and I have talked about, could address these threats and could help in terms of recruiting and retaining workers if they knew that their safety was protected. If you want to elaborate.
Sure. Thank you, Senator. It has been a big concern, as my colleagues here have said. It's interesting, we hear and we talk about as officials, we signed up for this. We know Secretary Benson so eloquently talked about that. Election judges, though, Secretary Oliver said this, they are the ones. It's our church members. It's our Elks Lodge members. It's the PTA. These are the people that are actually conducting the elections. And we have seen an increase in threats and intimidation to election workers, too, where we are seeing our counties in Colorado where people are trying to get the information, the names and addresses and telephone numbers of these citizen election workers so that they can put pressure on them, intimidate them. And it has had a chilling effect on their willingness to participate. However, like Secretary Benson now, I think we see people getting their second wind, finding resolve, and saying, we're not going to let this get to us. We're going to stand in the breach, and we're going to do this, and we're going to defend democracy. And I think we're starting to see more and more in that. And that's why, during my comments earlier, we're here in large part because of failure of leadership. If people would just stand up and tell the truth on both sides of the aisle, we'd be much better off. And when we can look around and see that we're all together in this, I think the way that we can move forward together and continue to run successful elections and elections that our citizens can be proud of and have confidence in. But we need people to step up and lead. And if they don't want to lead, then get behind us. We'll lead, because that's what we've been doing for 2 years.
Well, I really appreciate those remarks, just because I think it's very important for Republicans to stand up in addition to Democrats. And you're doing that today, and we've seen that in the January 6 hearings over in the House. And we've seen people, Democrats and Republicans, talk about what's happened to them. I was just thinking about those poll workers in Georgia, the mother and daughter pair, where the mom, Miss Ruby, was always so proud to wear the T-shirt that said Lady Ruby, and she couldn't even wear it anymore because she'd been singled out by the President of the United States. And those stories are heartfelt. Al Schmidt, the former Republican election commissioner in Philadelphia, who's not in his job now, but 3 kids, he had to move out of his house, and having both sides come and speak out, that's what's going to make the difference. And I liked what you said. So thank you, all of you. We look forward to working with you. I see Mr. Chair Norm Eisen's there, who just did a great job testifying before the Rules Committee. We can do 2 things at once, and he came by to see you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar, and thanks